what are some of the basic and best tips and tricks marketers should be thinking about with SEO in particular?
Yeah, definitely we're seeing that. Just colleagues I've talked to and, in the industry, the digital industry, we are seeing, because of some uncertainty about budgets, businesses big and small are, hesitant to spend media dollars and invest those things in SEO. Definitely even big agencies we're seeing are seeing RFPs and so forth move that way. I don't want to mitigate, the value of paid programs, but I know that's the reality for a lot of businesses. And I would say, if you are going to really double down on your organic efforts and be found, to Adam's point, what's coming up in a search result, a lot of people can get the information they need right in a search result. And right now, a lot of times is this store open? What's the right number to call? These sorts of things. So my advice to SEOs is, or if this is something that you're going to be spending a lot more time on, is make sure you get the structure of your content as optimized as possible. So what I mean by that is, there's, for people who haven't done SEO, you can mark up elements of your content to help engines understand the context. Google by itself, if it sees a bunch of numbers on the screen, unless there's some direction given that that's a phone number, that can really be difficult for it to understand kind of how that relates to everything. So there's what's called schema markup, that can really help engines understand the context. So if you haven't done that, this is a really good time to do that, because to Adam's point, as engines are finding new ways to ultimately help end users get the information they need, understanding that context is going to be really important. So you can go to schema.org. And by the way, this is a universal, this isn't like exclusive to Google. This markup works across a number of engines, and it'll show you a list of the entities that can be recognized by an engine. So, I mentioned things like a phone number, store hours and all that. This stuff's all indexable. And if you've got, prices, or you've got availabilities or ratings, you need to make sure that stuff is being communicated to engines. So that's really, really critical. Another thing, and I've said this for a lot of years, and I'd like to say I could take credit for it, but I actually heard another colleague tell me this over at Bright Edge, actually, is that, think of SEO as it's not something you're going to do. It's going to be what happens when everything else is done right. And so what I mean by that is, you're going to need to have, your content teams, if they're going to be going back and updating content, there's going to need to be best practices they think about right now. And if you asked me to show you a report for this, I couldn't do it, but I do speculate if this is true that, the internet, we've got bandwidth issues right now with everybody streaming and things like that. You don't want to have a site that's slow. So if you've got old scripts and things like that, you need to make sure your IT department, or if you have an agency building this for you, they're really, really looking at making things as lean as possible. And that's a best practice in general. But when you've got, a scenario where everyone's on Netflix and everyone's streaming, beyond SEO, you need to think about that stuff. You don't want your site to be lagging. You don't want, and that can affect your, your ability to rank. So, definitely think about that. And the other thing that I see a lot of businesses doing, and I've had a lot of people ask me about, is, if you're going to go back and update blogs or change things to kind of, reflect modern or reflect kind of what's going on right now, make sure, and this is kind of down in the weeds for a tip, but like if you've got a date stamp on like a blog post or something like that, make sure you're highlighting that this has been updated, because there's a lot of new content getting pumped out right now, and you want engines to know that your stuff's fresh. That's not going to be like a silver bullet, like suddenly you'll, rank for things that you hadn't. But those sorts of signals are really important right now. So definitely think about, making sure that you're showing that your content's fresh and that it's really clear what the context of that content is.
Can I add a couple things, what Dave said? Dave mentioned schema, which is so critical and so important. Schema is adjusting as well, too. So they now are supporting a new schema type like COVID emergency. I think they're actually calling it emergency messaging, but it was released in response to the COVID crisis. So as you are, if that is something you are considering, make sure to look at that too. It could be really simple. If you have that, like we see so many sites have that little banner or emergency message bar at the top that says, learn more about our COVID-19 response here. Just putting that within schema markup on either side would take a webmaster or the person owning your website 5 minutes to do. And it can really help Google and the other search engines understand that this is what this content's about.